How would your perspective change if you could better keep in mind that each hardship has an expiration date, and no matter what hell it is that you're going through, that if you just keep your wits about you, you'll be able to shoulder your way through it. Life's toughest moments aren't where your story ends, but they are where transformation begins. And seeing to it that you make your way through is all about choices and making the right ones, arming yourself with resilience and grit, and fortifying your effort with unshakable determination in the face of adversity. Because if you're anything like me, and you refuse to stop no matter how difficult the road gets, then we'll both walk away with one or two insights that will better help us confront our challenges head on, keep ourselves in motion, and find strategies to use even the darkest moments as fuel to continue through. If you don't know, my name is Chad Joshua, and I'm working my way through writing a 100-song catalog. I write songs about populism, freedom, and liberty. This is my artist channel, which I use to promote those songs. In my free time, I like to have these chats in order to share ideas together about things we can do to better our efforts of making our goals into accomplishments. I thought that this would be something interesting to discuss today because so often in life we come up against the unforeseen, and regardless of how much we've planned and how much we've positioned ourselves, we're faced with the reality of having to navigate these external circumstances. And sometimes these external circumstances are so overwhelming that they're borderline hellish. But even in the bleakest and darkest of situations, we're still faced with the choice of whether it is we succumb to that or whether we find the fortitude and the resolve to persevere and push our way through. Because sometimes when you're in the midst of it all and the storm is raging all around you, even it can be easy to lose sight of the fact that this too will pass. The truth about challenges is that hardships feel overwhelming because they demand more than you think that you can give. They always have some way of seeming insurmountable, and thusly they take over and take all of the attention. And everything else that was easy and enjoyable seems to get washed away with the influx of stress and the way that the problem inundates you. This creates a sort of tunnel vision, which makes it very hard to see your way through. And when you feel like that, then it makes sense that you feel stuck, because in a temporary way you are. And sometimes in those moments, it may feel something like a quicksand where you get nervous to make any movement at all because it seems like it's only making matters worse. All of that can become emotionally exhaustive and it will certainly do a number on motivation. But it's almost imperative to maintain a frame of mind wherein you keep a focus of the fact that hardship is temporary, but it will require some sort of movement in order to leverage yourself out of it. So in these cases, even the smallest steps count. You know, in life, there's all kinds of challenges that arise and no one is immune from that. Now, there may be people who are a little bit better positioned in order to navigate them. And rather than letting ourselves feel any envy about that, we could just take it as a case in point and focus our intention on striving towards developing the attributes that they have. I almost feel bad to give an example in this because sometimes hardships and struggles, they're not equal. And I'm not immune to having serious hardships. I have serious hardships. But rather than get too in the dark, the example that I want to use has to do with my music. It may not be something that you think of as so serious, and I get that. I only want to use it as a metaphor for the idea of how with time things pass. And rather than getting too dark in the weeds, stay on a topic that's relatable to what I talk about on the channel. So for me, I want to talk about this time whenever I had the studio here not long ago, all built out and ready to start making my songs and put them out. And this was about 4 years ago, and the whole lockdown thing was going on, and the whole force to take this untested pharmaceutical product into your body activity was taking place, and the whole getting up to speed with what was really underneath all of that in regards to the global elite's effort towards implementing global governance. And I'm there aware of all of this, you know, neck deep into writing these fight songs about that, you know, ready to be active and participate. And as soon as I had the studio done, I had about 1 year to sit in there, getting up to speed with production again and getting up to speed with songwriting again. And, you know, if you don't know, it's sort of like farming, like you have to spread a lot of seed out and raise up a big crop, and then you harvest the most beautiful fruit. And I was just getting to the harvest whenever I got the call that the landlord wasn't going to be able to continue the lease. You know, living here in Taiwan as a Westerner, I have to find accommodations that I can live in for me to live that are relatable to my own culture so that I'm comfortable in the long term. And in the community that I live, it's smaller here, so it was difficult to find. an apartment that was like a Western apartment. And the only one we could find in the time frame that we had was really abysmal. The fortunate thing about it was, with all of my music and that I needed to be able to find a space that I could build in some area to record, and I needed to sort of be able to do what I wanted with the place. And so the one benefit of it being so abysmal was that in exchange for me taking on the work of bringing the apartment back from the brink, I would be allowed to bring the apartment to my own standard. And I did that as cost effectively as I could. It was exhaustive, and the whole thing just sort of broke my spirit. Being off track when I was so close. I felt like there was a confluence of circumstances that were happening. In some way, I felt like I was positioned for that, like it was providential. And then immediately the rug was yanked out from underneath us, and we're sleeping on the dirt floor for a half a year. And there's a toilet leak from the apartment above, and there's literal fecal matter coming down the walls, and nobody is doing anything about it. And that goes on for about a full year. Before that was all resolved, we were just living in a literal toilet bowl. And there was no kitchen. There's still no kitchen now. I still have to build something in there. But I have a long-term lease, and the rent is cheap, and I have the flexibility to do what I want. But the problem is the toll that all took. The only comfort was in the evening when I would get home, we started to have these picnic meals where we would make pizza boats in our toaster oven and baked French fries out of a freezer bag, a bowl of fruit, and some Oreo cookies for good measure. And for whatever reason, because everything was so knocked off course and upsetting, that became a daily ritual that went on for a year while we refaced all the walls, while we grinded down the uneven floor and put down vinyl flooring, painted, playing a puzzle slider game with all of our belongings jammed into that space, doing our best to keep the dust out of all of it. That little ritual became the only warm thing about the whole thing. But you know how terrible that is to eat garbage in that way. And so to make matters worse, I found myself at the end of that year with still no music released, a year behind schedule, and 20 pounds overweight. Now don't look at me now and say, wow, you do look a little too plump, because I've lost that 20 pounds. But the problem was that it hadn't hit me yet. The reality of having gained the weight hadn't hit me, but it was starting to. And then that was the summer whenever the Oliver Anthony Richmond Over Richmond came out, and then just hit and broke wild. And it's a great song. I'm so happy for him. My music is totally different than that, but it's in the same vein in terms of speaking truth to power. And then I felt like, oh, here he is. He's the one that captured the lightning, not me. And I know we're in a big fight, and the most important thing is that we all get out of it with our freedom. And so me being of consequence isn't so important, but just as any person doing anything, I would rather be consequential than inconsequential. So immediately I'm put into a position where I'm feeling inconsequential. Self-loathing is now hitting because I'm looking at the mirror. I still don't have any place to record. I'm older now by almost 2 years since the last time I sat down to make music. And my whole vision, which I exist on my vision, it has been completely yanked out from under me, and I just don't know what I am supposed to be doing. A total depression. Like I said before, I do have problems that are more significant than even this, but I know that these kinds of things that I'm saying, it's not like somebody has an illness or something like that. I get it. But I only want to say that in the midst of that and in the heart of that, having everything that I was striving towards just be destroyed yet again, I'm faced with the same kind of repeated misfortune. And in that moment, it had completely taken its toll. But finally, it all did come to a head where I did make a decision to start to make movement. So what about you? What is the hell that you're living through right now? How is it disturbing your pathway forward? If you think about hardships like driving through a tunnel, you get into that tunnel and it's all pitch black, and eventually you can start to see the light at the end there, and it's all just a matter of just continuing on to it. It might seem like it's far away, but it's closer than it feels. There's a lot that we can take away from just reframing circumstance where we're not exactly looking at the problem, but we're looking about what steps can be taken immediately that provide you something. If it is that they're only just feeding your very soul something that it can be grateful of, you're taking an action and your whole being gets it. And by doing that repeatedly in succession, then you're starting to feed yourself information that is all working to get yourself consciously and subconsciously realigned and out of the woods. That movement, it shifts your focus from problem to solution. And that progress, no matter how small, it starts to build your confidence. If you need help knowing how to begin to create that kind of momentum, it all starts, like everything seems to, by breaking it down into small pieces that you can attack one by one, keeping it manageable. That way you can focus on what is directly in front of you so that you're able to celebrate those incremental steps that are leading you away from the fire. Because action, no matter how small, creates the momentum that you need to push through the adversity. You know, in the story I was telling, when I heard that Oliver Anthony song come out, it was a sort of a revelation for me to get out of that funk or just die in it. And that's what I did. I grabbed the computer, I grabbed my studio speakers, set them up, got everything wired, and I had a couple of songs that I had been noodling around with, and I got to the task of honing in on one and tracking it into the computer acoustically, and then building out a production around it. And at the time of this video, we're coming right up to the 1 year mark since I released that song. I've lost all of that excess weight. I've gotten more competent dealing with the YouTube and the algorithm, gotten only more determined, only more focused. And it was just this morning I was saying to my wife that I had this epiphany, and that doing all of these videos about goal setting and working towards them, I've been able to critically think about things and observe my own perspective. And I realized today that I have succeeded in achieving the primary compulsion of my life, and that was to be in a position to be able to sit down and write songs, record them, and publish them. And for the first time, maybe today, I wasn't thinking about fighting the algorithm and trying to get an audience. I was just mindful of the fact that I have a great song in there now that I'm working on, and that it's about to be released, and it sounds great, and I'm super excited to get home and to work on that. And while I know that deep water may always be just right around the corner, for the immediate now, I've succeeded to navigate my way out of that last patch. I'm going to do my level best to revel in the opportunity that I have to enjoy where it is that I am in this moment. And I encourage you that if you're in the midst of a hellish fight, just continue to push through and work through it, because even if it takes a year or 2 years and you don't want to hear that, I know that you will be able to get yourself out of it. But based on all that, I'm not going to let this time now be defined with me feeling marginalized because I don't have the reach that I'd like. No, in fact not. I'm going to just enjoy how excellent that I am when it comes to the craft of writing songs. I'm going to enjoy the opportunity that I have to flex in that effort. And I encourage you to strive towards the same thing. Keep going, and if you have some good advice from me, you can share it below. In the meantime, keep your head up. I'm going to keep mine up. And if you haven't had a chance to hear my new song, you can listen to it here. We'll talk again soon.